I was unsatisfied after graduating from a 4 year college. The days went when I couldn't attend school for a while after graduating from elementary school followed me like a shadow. After graduating from college, I went on to pursue a master's degree in a graduate school. My major was accounting, and there were only 4 students because the department was new. All of them were post college classmates. My life was harder when I went to graduate school. Sometimes I had to go to school during the day, but fortunately my superiors gave me some leniency. My second younger brother took a leave of absence from college before joining the army, and soon after, my youngest brother entered the university. The youngest applied for a prestigious university in the first entrance exam, but failed due to a slight gap in scores. He entered N University on the second entrance exam. We were always short on money when we had to pay for his tuition. In the midst of a life of constant hardship, my wife proposed a plan for our future family. She asked me to study instead of having more children. She recommended me to have a vasectomy, saying that it is complicated for a woman to have an operation. When I went to the Reserve Army training, the unit promoted vasectomies, and the unit gave free vasectomies to applicants and exempted them from the day's training. The government was encouraging them to have one child. The government said, even if you have one child, our country is still overcrowded. One day, when I came home from work, my wife was laying on her stomach. She had gone to the health center for an operation relating to our family plan without my consent beforehand. My wife looked weak, but she had courage. My youngest brother took a leave of absence from his university and studied to repeat the university entrance exam. There were a lot of students who studied to repeat the university entrance exam in order to go to the university of their choice. They chose to take their second chance in order to go to a so-called prestigious university. They seemed to think that going to a prestigious university was a shorter way to success. My brother applied for a prestigious university again, but he failed again due to a small gap in scores. He chose to join the army. When he left home to join the army, I could not get out of the door because of my tears. I did not want him to see myself crying when he was sent to the army. I felt sorry that he did not get the university entrance he wanted, and most of all, I was worried about how he would adjust to military life with bad eyesight. When I was in graduate school, my 2 younger brothers went to university. I needed more than $1,000,001 to pay the tuition for them too. As the number of city buses and tourist buses increased, so did my father's work, but it was not enough to pay for my younger brother's tuition. By the time I paid my tuition, I went to the private money market near Namdaemun Market and took out a loan with 2 credit cards. When I paid for the purchase of $1,000,001 item with my credit card, they gave about 800,000 won in cash after deducting the prepaid interest. While attending graduate school, I did my best to make up for the slack in my office work. As I got used to the unfamiliar life of the association, I felt proud to work in the coal industry even though I was an office worker. At that time, the association computerized its work. 4 members of the association received 6 months of training at a computer institute in preparation for computerization. I was educated too, and I learned computer introductions and COBOL programming. At that time, computer technology was rudimentary, and Gumsung Co., currently LG Electronics, was manufacturing and selling an 8-bit personal computer. The association bought a medium-sized computer manufactured abroad. I was very interested in computer programming since it was related to my graduate school major. Although I worked hard, I had a lot of trouble using computer knowledge that I had learned theoretically in practice. My first computerized task was a daily report of briquettes supply and demand. I was programming with the COBOL according to the coding rules, but there were countless error messages. The computer did not allow a single error. Whenever I corrected the error, I was as happy if I had scored in a game. I sometimes stayed up all night in the computer room even though my boss did not tell me to. After a few days of trial and error, I was able to print out a clumsy report. It may have been clumsy, but I was satisfied with the result of my hard work. The Agung-E fuel hole for houses type of floor heating system used in many houses was replaced by the Seimeul basic type, or the special briquettes boiler, and the demand for briquettes increased dramatically. There were 17 briquette factories in Seoul. In the winter, whenever the daily supply of briquettes per day exceeded 10 million, the agencies concerned were on alert. It was because there was a limit to the quantity of coal brought into Seoul along the railway line. The supply and demand of coal was very important. People said that the fluctuation of briquettes would make the position of the Seoul mayor unstable. Thanks to the importance of briquettes, I received the Seoul Mayor Award without doing much work. I was proud to work in the coal industry since it was essential to people's lives. When meeting my high school friends, I used to talk about the importance of the coal industry. One of my friends who worked at the bank stopped me from saying how big the coal industry was. I wanted to give a jab to the friend who said something as if he were pouring cold water on a fire. Even though the coal industry served as the foundation for the nation's economic development in Korea, a few people belittled the fact. In the year of the 1988 Seoul Olympics, the government implemented a system to ban the use of coal briquettes and other solid fuels in large cities. The policy had a fatal effect on the coal industry. Gas companies began to supply liquefied natural gas to parts of the metropolitan area. At the time of the '88 Olympic Games, briquettes in Korea began to decline significantly as they were replaced by diesel. The briquettes industry began to decline from its peak in 1987. To make matters worse, the rise in labor costs from the development of new towns in the metropolitan area greatly affected the coal industry. The labor costs at construction sites doubled. Workers left coal mines, and upward pressure on labor costs weighed heavily on the coal mine. Every year when I was working on calculating the cost of coal briquettes, I was only an assistant to a related officer, but I was confident in the data I prepared. When I was in charge of planning in the mining department, I tried to apply the knowledge I had learned in graduate school. Once the National Tax Service began levying value-added taxes on coal produced by the subcontractor of mining, also known as Dokdae. The coal produced by the subcontractor of mining accounted for about half of the nation's total production, and the value-added tax they had to pay for a year came to several billion won. The coal industry was on high alert, and the president of a coal mine company called a working-level meeting for countermeasures. We had to provide legal grounds, and we had to get an authoritative interpretation that even the subcontractor of mining could be replaced by a coal miner and exempt from value-added taxes. We had to inquire into the central government for the authoritative interpretation, and we needed decisive material. I started searching the association library, which I used to frequent to prepare for my thesis. I found important material on one corner of the bookcase in the library. There was a small industrial classification book published by the National Statistical Office in the early 60s. There, I got an important data that once classified the subcontractor of mining as a coal miner. I could easily get an authoritative interpretation. While I was working as planning manager, I focused on supporting the coal industry. Policy decisions in the coal industry were made by the government official or the seniors of the association, and it was my job to write a report for the policy suggestions. As the coal industry began to decline, I was praised by my officials for making a comprehensive report on the coal industry. The comprehensive policies for the coal industry were reported not only to the officials of central government, but also to the government of Gangwon province. Every time there was a meeting for the policies, I was present as a working level person in charge of the improvement of the coal industry in Korea. However, I couldn't see my future being in the declining industry. I wanted to move to another field.